What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Busters podcast. My name is Eric, and as always, my co-host Will is going to be joining me, but I'm going to do this first part solo, and then he's going to come in after the fact for some discussion and opinions on this player. But as you can probably tell by the thumbnail and by the title of the video, we are starting our 2023 Draft Prospect Profile Series with none other than Jaxon Smith Njigba. Njigba is a 6-foot-tall, 200-pound wide receiver out of Ohio State. He is 20.9 years old, and he is a junior, so he's an early declare, which you love to see. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school and then committed to Ohio State, who is really competing with LSU for the label of wide receiver U as of late. Ever since Brian Hartline took over as the wide receiver coach, we've seen the likes of Terry McLaurin, Paris Campbell, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and now Jaxon Smith Njigba, and even Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, who are next up for classes down the road. But my point in bringing that up is that Brian Hartline really knows how to coach these guys up right and prepare them for the NFL level. So you love to see that for a guy like JSN. But back to him specifically, he only played in 3 games this year and didn't finish any of them due to a lingering hamstring injury. Personally, I'm not worried that the injury is going to follow him into the NFL. He's got plenty of time to recover in time for the combine and for the draft, and obviously for training camp and beyond. So not too worried about that. But if you're wondering why we're talking about a guy who didn't finish a single game this year as potentially being the best wide receiver in his class, let me take you back to his 2021 season. In 13 games, he set the Ohio State record for most receptions and yards in a season, with 95 receptions, over 1,600 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He did this as a 19-year-old sophomore while playing alongside 2 top 15 draft picks in Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. He also finished that season with a historic Rose Bowl performance. Against Utah, he caught 15 passes for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. Granted, Utah was decimated at the cornerback position, so they trotted out a converted running back to cover him for that game. But still, it was a big stage and a really close game where Ohio State relied on Njigba to get that victory. So that's kind of some of his accolades, but let's get into his specific strengths and weaknesses. We'll start out with the weaknesses. Most people think that he's not going to have top-tier speed or athleticism. I'm not as worried about his athleticism, just overall in that category, but I do agree that he's not the fastest. On tape, I've seen him get chased down from behind on plays where you'd like to see him score for sure. Most people are predicting that he'll run somewhere in the 4.5s and the 40. We'll have to wait until the combine comes around to see for sure, but honestly, that's not too bad. We've seen similar style receivers like Keenan Allen and Amon-Ra St. Brown run in the 4.6s and even the 4.7s, and they've gone on to have incredibly successful careers. Some people are worried that he plays almost exclusively out of the slot, and that might limit him at the NFL level, but that really doesn't concern me at all. Justin Jefferson was a slot guy at LSU, played pretty much exclusively there, and look at what he's doing now. But specific to JSN, I just think he has the size and skill to excel no matter where he's aligned on the field. Playing out of the slot is also just an advantage for wide receiver, so even if he stays as just a slot guy in the NFL, I don't think that that's really a bad thing. Honestly, that's all I really have as far as weaknesses. I know it wasn't that much, but I really do think he's a really well-rounded wide receiver. So let's get into his strengths. I think he's a technician at the wide receiver position. He has a really quick release and a variety of techniques to beat press and create separation early in his routes. He's a really fluid route runner that can maintain speeds throughout his breaks, so even if he doesn't win early, he can create separation late. He also has a really high football IQ. He understands how to manipulate defensive backs in man coverage, as well as how to find soft spots in zone and present an easy target to his quarterback. He has really, really good hands. He prefers to pluck the ball out away from his body rather than let it get into his chest, which is something that you love to see. He also has great body control and field awareness, which allow him to make some ridiculous catches like this one in the back of the end zone. And on top of all of that, he's really good after the catch as well. Although he doesn't have that home run speed like we talked about, he's really shifty and uses that to create tons of yards after catch. So with all of that being said, that's just a quick and dirty overview of Jaxon Smith Njigba, and let's get into the discussion section with my friend Will.
Hey guys, I'm Will. So we're going to go ahead and discuss this Jaxon Smith Njigba. We're going to talk about where we think he ranks in the class. Just more of a discussion amongst, me and Eric. I know Eric got the breakdown for you guys. We're just going to talk about how we feel about him as a player. And the first question we got is he a wide receiver 1 in this class? Is he the wide receiver 1 in this class? And me personally, I do think so in terms of just his skill set, what he's got available to him. But what do you think, Eric, personally? Because I know a lot of people have like Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, and Jaxon Smith Njigba up in that higher tier. What do you think it is that separates him, if you do believe that he is separated from that class?
I do, yeah. I for sure think he's the wide receiver one. There's definitely an argument to be made for those other guys. I think Quentin Johnston probably has a higher ceiling, just because of his size, speed, and athleticism that JSN doesn't really possess. But I think he's probably the safest pick in this entire draft class, outside of maybe Bijan. And just from what we've seen, like the track record of Ohio State receivers that have come out in recent years, and how he compared statistically and on tape compared to those players, like I think he's just as good, if not better, than the Chris Olaves and the Garrett Wilsons that we've seen come out and smash for fantasy and in the NFL. So I'd be hard pressed not to take him as the wide receiver one.
Yeah, and there's a lot of common thought, at least amongst a lot of the fantasy community, a lot of people in the Dynasty that think that Jaxon Smith Njigba, out of like the three receivers, meaning Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave during like his sophomore year, they were saying he was the best receiver out of those three. And, this year was a wash due to injury. And like Eric said earlier, we don't think that's really going to follow him into the pros. That's kind of a fluke sort of a situation. But in terms of his skill set and everything he's got, he's the complete package. The only thing that he's missing is being that elite level athlete, and it's already been proven that you don't have to be that in the NFL to thrive.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we're in lockstep there. We agree he's the wide receiver one. Where do you think he slots in to the Dynasty wide receiver ranks after he's drafted in your rookie drafts, and like how he compares to last year's class?
That's a great question, actually. So when it comes to Dynasty wide receiver ranks, it's tough for me to really say how he's going to rank up until we actually know where his landing spot is and what kind of a ceiling he could possibly have. Because he could go somewhere where he is one of the few options, like say he gets drafted to the Ravens or anything like that, a team that needs a wide receiver to run that alpha role. But I do think that once he slots in, he should slot in somewhere around, and it sounds weird because they've had a year in the NFL already, but he should slot in somewhere around where like Chris Olave is in terms of his Dynasty rank already.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the rankings right now. I should have done this ahead of time. Give me one moment. But yeah, if you look at the wide receiver rankings among Dynasty on Keep Trade Cut, which, that's not the end all be all, but good kind of market value for a lot of these receivers. Garrett Wilson right now is the wide receiver 5 in Dynasty. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the wide receiver 7. Chris Olave is the wide receiver 9. One of my comps for JSN is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's kind of Amon-Ra plus. He's got more size, and I think he's probably slightly better athlete, maybe a little bit better speed than Amon-Ra. I think he was like a 4.61 in the 40 guy during the combine. I do expect JSN to probably be in the 4.5s. But yeah, so I think he's immediately, upon being drafted into the NFL, a top 10 Dynasty wide receiver with the potential to get up into that top 5 right around where Garrett Wilson is now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Just based off of, I think he's the most pro-ready receiver out of this class for sure, in terms of just like we said, his tool set. But in terms of where do you think you would take him in a rookie draft?
Yeah, so if we're talking super flex, Bijan is still the 101 to me. And then it'd be really hard for me to take JSN over either of the quarterbacks just because of how valuable that position is in Dynasty. So I'd probably go with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud before him, but that 104 is where I'm taking him for sure. I know that some people would argue Jahmyr Gibbs at the 104 before taking JSN, but I just can't get myself to do it.
I have to say, I don't even think that's a bad take. I've seen some people put him as high as the 103 just based off of, I guess, even what your team needs. If you have 2 solid quarterbacks, say you were somehow able to luck into getting 2 young quarterbacks, don't really need anybody, I wouldn't be mad if you took a JSN at the top 3 spot.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think for value's sake, and like if it means missing out on JSN entirely, then I wouldn't necessarily trade back. But I think there's gonna be somebody in your league that's quarterback needy, and so if you have that 102 or 103 and you aren't quarterback needy, I would definitely look to trade back, and hopefully maybe with that person who has the 104, so that you can still pick up JSN and then maybe another late pick after that. But
that is true. There may be a window still, even at the beginning, because rookie wide receivers do tend to struggle a little bit early on.
Yeah, true. So even, not that I'm necessarily projecting that for JSN, but even if you wanted to wait until the season started, we talked about that in our Dynasty advice video. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and check it out. But yeah, there's typically kind of a rookie dip for wide receivers, specifically where they start slow and they might present a buy window, like you said. But yeah, if we're talking about non-super flex, just standard leagues, I'm taking him at the 102 easy, right behind Bijan.
Nice. No, I like that. I really do. But like you said, with the super flex, quarterback position is pretty valuable. Something I've learned the hard way a little bit in Dynasty. So it's definitely a good idea to take quarterbacks when you can in rookie drafts. For
sure. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps up our discussion. It was quick, it was easy, but I hope you guys learned something from it. I'd like to get everybody's kind of opinion down in the comments. Engage with us. Let us know what you think about JSN. Do you think he's the wide receiver one? Where are you going to be taking him in rookie drafts? All that good stuff. But yeah, Will, you want to wrap us up before we get out of here?
Hell yeah. If you guys made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. And make sure you guys do all that great YouTube stuff like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can know when we drop all our newest stuff, because we will be doing a lot more of these player profiles. This is not the last one by far. So, stick with us, because we're going to be doing this thing through the whole off season, getting you guys ready for Dynasty and getting you guys prepared for your rookie drafts or even your startup drafts. So yeah, stay tuned. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And as always, we love you. Thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.